stand for Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to need a motion and a second and a vote for the approval of the agenda. All those in favor? Okay. Consideration of the minutes of June 17th, 2025, our regular board meeting, a motion and a second. All those in favor? Okay, and the minutes of June 27th, 2025, our special board meeting. All those in favor? Okay, no opposition. All right, so we've got Dr. Gibbs is going to discuss the bond and the levy planning. So Dr. Gibbs?
All right, we'll jump in, and I know you got a chance to look at this, so just to kind of touch on a few things there on the second page. I've shared some of these with you in the past, but this kind of mapped it out a little differently with the lessons learned. So really kind of the takeaways, if we are not going to really engage in expansive building projects, the 90-cent levy is a little bit high for just maintaining what we have if we're going to keep doing smaller levies like we did in the past. Because we're at about an $80 million bonding capacity. It could go up with the reassessment that we recently got. We're still waiting on the final figures there. And so if we were all to go all the way out to that 80%, we would need the 90 cents. But if we're going to hover around 40, 50 million, a lower debt service levy would definitely cover that and be able to help us continue to do bond issues, but nothing massive. We did the demographic study now almost 2 years ago, and then our recent enrollment trends are really showing that we aren't growing. So we're going down class sizes at all buildings, going down, as far as the amount of teachers and staff. So we don't really need more learning space at most of our buildings at this time. One thing that really became clear through this that we kind of learned is that we do as a community rely more heavily on local funding. It's a higher percentage for us than Potosi, a West County, even a Central Fredericktown, because when the foundation formula was created, we had a higher assessed valuation. We continue to have one. So the higher percentage of our revenue comes from local funding, and more from the state goes to those other schools. That's just the balance that was created back when the formula. Now there is a task force to redo the formula, but that's probably a couple years out in the making. I really just kind of reflecting on it, community engagement going throughout the process was lower than we might have thought going in. We tried to have forums, events, get input. Our surveys that we do every year, we have trouble getting results there. So that was a mountain to climb. Move over to the other side. Of course, we knew going in it would be a challenge to do both at one, and really differentiating between the two has been difficult. People just think 365 covers everything. They don't realize that 275 is kind of low on that side, 90 cents is kind of high on the debt service side. Definitely, I think we learned the hard lesson that some of the projects probably lended more a little bit to once, and we worked hard to convey them as needs, but the Performing Arts Center was the biggest polarizing factor, which I've shared with you. Our reserves, although solid, they're not exorbitantly high, which some wanted to portray. Talked about this as well. They did drop after the most recent budget. We did the budget transfer from Fund 4 to Fund 1 and brought our reserves down to just under 35%. 25 to 30% is a healthy level, and so we can only spend them so long. Other school like Potosi passed one. They have 70% reserves. They passed their bond issue. They didn't get blasted for that, but they weren't asking for more because they didn't need more with 70%, and they get more state funding. And then a lot of armchair quarterback of like, well, we passed these in the past. You need to find out what would work, what has worked. But really, it's apples to oranges. We were asking for a levy increase for the first time in decades. So it's a completely different message, and all the previous smaller bonds were mainly for the most critical needs. We were asking for money at a tough time when Doge was in place, and so it's just really opened this up to criticism with past practices, falsely accusing us of lack of accountability, those type of things. So just a very different, and in the past they hadn't faced organized opposition like we did, so very different scenario that we went through, so just learning from that. And take that and do something with it. So last few months have been just kind of reworking. And so I'll start with the bond issue on the next page. We've whittled it down, mainly ran it through the executive committee and the admin team. Now I'm running these ideas through you. Got other ideas I'll share at the very end of what to focus on, but we're really trying to whittle down to just the most critical basic needs, updates across the district, and a few of the additional items that would kind of get voters out, different voter groups out, and hopefully get people excited that we are still moving forward. We're not just only doing HVAC roofing, which all are important, but we are making some improvements. We'll still need that supermajority if we do this on an April ballot of 4/7, 57.14. So next page, if you got a chance to look at this is what we've whittled down our projects to be. High school took the biggest cuts. There was a lot going on at the high school, over $20 million in projects. We're down to $500,000. Only putting the elevator in for ADA accessibility at this point, not reconfiguring any of the areas because that really can't happen as easily if we're not building on spaces, and building a whole wing on without a storm shelter goes against what we communicated that the guidelines were, so it really ties our hands there. The middle school could definitely still benefit from some reconfigured spaces. There's still rooms that are temporarily partitioned, have walls that were added, accordion walls, and so we would still pick up those 3 classrooms, but not do a whole lot of reconfiguring within the building. Just continue to do what our maintenance crews do, keep it clean, paint it, those type of things. Get a serving line, better flow, but not knock out walls in the cafeteria like Wade was originally projecting. So that's right at $3 million for that building. HVAC for the next 2 buildings, the safety vestibule running through the committee feels like it still needs improved at Roosevelt. It's just an awkward entry system there. Jefferson, improved traffic over on that side of town, get more people off the street, better parking, better lighting. Not necessarily do much to the bus loop, although that was a minimal cost, so that could be added back in. Daisy Baker really needs a HVAC upgrade that would drain our Capital 4 funds, so if we could get that as part of a bond issue, that would be great. The windows don't open without falling out, so we do need to probably try to keep that on there. Washington Franklin getting the facelift indoor and outdoor, so most of that has stayed on there. Truman, nothing changed there. We've moved the classes from the Career Academy up to the high school, so we want to call that an activity and wellness center, just getting some more space down there, green space, and parking with the south wing being partially removed, so just sitting there unfinished, and those all kind of grouped together. And then the district-wide project of leaving on the athletic complex at the middle school and improving traffic flow and parking over there, and then we are getting rough numbers on the intercom system. It was just a placeholder of $500,000. We think that might be kind of on par, but we're checking on that. And then tech and infrastructure upgrades, $750,000, which we're also trying to line out more detail of what that would be. And $850,000 represents 5 buses. We're already ordering 2, so we know what they cost. So hopefully they'd be similar a year or 2 from now. So take all of that, transfer it to the next page, factor in contingencies and fees and stuff, and that's where the $21.4 million comes from. So quite a bit less than last time. Any questions on those projects? What was on there before that's not on there anymore?
For the high school, the number 2 doesn't dictate we need more classroom space for high school.
If we were reconfiguring spaces and trying to open up some spaces for better traffic flow, we would have definitely benefited, but that kind of goes out with not adding the additional. We are bringing the health services class back into the basement. We wanted to open that space up for the wrestling program, but that's not on the table right now because putting that class back in there and getting it out of the Career Academy, saving on some staffing down there. So between the Career Academy space, if we ever put students back down there, we have enough space. So no, the numbers really don't dictate that. Now, if we ever get into a situation where there's open enrollment, people are coming into our district, that might swing the other way. We might have a little uptick in the number of students. Other questions? So the other thing I mentioned to you a couple months back, and so just to line it out a little bit more and put it in black and white for you, work with that $21.4 million really gives us the flexibility. That 90 cents is a little bit high for our debt service levy. And so we could take 30 cents and transfer that. You can see what our new operating levy would be and what our debt service levy would go down to, and that would generate at least $1.5 million. 40 cents, what we tried to pass, would have generated about $2 million. That's even with the current assessed valuation, so a higher assessed valuation would probably push that number up. With that, we would do some of the goals from before, close the pay gap, but also do a little more proactive budgeting with resource rotations that we put in place. And then we could still run bond issues every 5 to 7 years with that 60 cents and do those $20 million, $18 million, whatever, HVAC, roofing projects, parking lots, build an addition on here if we see that we need it, we're growing. So to do a levy transfer, we can't just say, as a board, we think we need to move this money over there and do budgeting a different way. We still have to get a simple majority, so that we would need one more vote than 50% for that. It's not an increase, it's just moving over, but people may be caught on that, eventually that 90 cents could go away or go down, and so they would save taxes. So it's kind of overcoming that. But.
When will our election be held?
April? Yeah. I do think the next year we could run one in August as well, because I think that would be a primary year. We wouldn't have bear the brunt of the cost, and it being an even year, it would be, whenever you run a levy transfer, it's a simple majority. It doesn't matter which election you run it with. So we have some flexibility on that. I don't think so, but that's an option on there. So, and they're not. I really wasn't counting on any decisions tonight. I wanted to explain it, answer questions. You guys think about it in 2 weeks, and when we come back, we can revisit it, and maybe you'll have some more thoughts on which direction we can go. So I kind of outlined the pros and cons. I'll talk through those. If we do the levy transfer, we definitely have more annual revenue for higher pay, buying buses on a regular schedule, planning for technology on a regular schedule, instead of just waiting for those bond issues to pass. I see it as a long-term solution well beyond me being here, and just kind of sets up for success to where we're not, robbing Peter to pay Paul has become kind of been a saying that I've used a little bit. And so we would be doing that with no overall increase to the tax rate, so hopefully a little more palatable as long as we can explain it to the voters. That's easier said than done. And then I've already mentioned the next two bullets, and then the last one as well. We become a little less dependent on bond issues. Like right now, we had to draw from our reserves to pay for these expenses that we just couldn't put off much longer. What is a problem is that it stretches our current budget a little bit further while we wait to pass a bond issue. We're going to have to keep using reserves for some of these projects we can't wait on. And then if in the future we start to grow, or we realize we're just done with Washington Franklin, or whatever the case may be, and we want to move on and have a new building, it's going to be a little harder to do that, because 60 cents is going to be harder to make a payment on that $80 million bonding capacity. You'd probably have to raise it back up at that point. But hopefully that if we saw growth and needed that, the voters would get behind that, and we could do an increase to build something new if the need be. So the bond issue pros and cons. So definitely we have more immediate help with the needed updates that we've been waiting on. So the list that I went over would be put into place by next summer. And then if we do get to do some improvements to learning environments that will make an impact for kids, for our community. Hopefully people would appreciate that we're still moving forward. But it doesn't really help with the general budget, and then keeps us reliant on passing bonds for just those everyday things that maybe we could get away from being so dependent on. We do have some urgency. I mentioned this a couple months ago when I first brought us back together after not passing the bond and levy. We do have to pass a bond issue some level in the next 4 to 5 years in order to keep the 90-cent levy. And the reason it being is that this year we have a lower amount of debt than we've had in a long time. And when we calculate the 90 cents based on the assessed valuation, it would calculate down very low this year. So we need to prepay. We prepaid the previous 2 years. We need to prepay, I think it was, I can't remember what it was my first year, but last year it was $2 million. This year it's $4 million. So it's increasing each year what we have to prepay. And after we prepay that, we'll only have about $20 million left in debt. And so when we're generating $5 to $6 million of debt service money from our assessed valuation every year, in the next 4 to 5 years, that would be gone. We would wipe out all of our debt, and we would have to go down to 275, and the 90 cents debt service levy would set out. And so that would be really detrimental to us, because getting that back once everybody's taxes go down that much would be pretty substantial. So options for April 2026, you can run the levy transfer, move 90 cents, kind of fix our budget long term. Option 2, run the bond issue, propose to voters keeping it the same. Then in a year or two, we would have to turn around and do the levy transfer. Or option 1, we'd have to turn around the very next year and run the bond issue at 60 cents. And then we could run both measures concurrently and just kind of emphasize we're not raising taxes. It's staying the same. The rate's staying the same. So it'll be a different message because we weren't able to say that with both measures. So just wanted to give you all to give some thoughts to those, knowing that we do have to, in the next 3 years, run probably both of them would be my recommendation, just the order. And if we skip a year between them, or if we do back-to-back. So what are our plans moving forward? Like I said, the executive team, we've been talking about this a lot in our meetings, and have some ideas on the recommendation. I want you guys to think about this in the next couple weeks, come back and have some thoughts and recommendation. Our admin team, I'm going to go over it when they come back in July, and get their thoughts in some small groups. And then we had a district steering committee that we worked with last year, and just have them review it and give some input. And then we want to do community focus groups, teams to provide input. And having a little bit of trouble getting people to turn out for things, I'm going to try to use some of the groups I'm already part of. Like I'm on the Farmington City Strategic Planning Group, so I'm hoping that Tim Porter would give me a few minutes at the end of one of those meetings to share the thoughts with that team and get their. I'm on the IDA group. Shanna's on planning and zoning, so maybe between those two groups they could weigh in on it. The Farmington Education Foundation, I did present for about an hour last year to them on the plans, had positive feedback, but I would go back to them, try to get feedback on this, do a community forum, get some parent leadership groups together. The Black Knight Insight participants, invite the past group back and the group that's going to start this year. So those are the groups that I'm hoping to get some input from, and by October, like Deborah direction, we got a little bit under the gun last year, rolled around to December, and we had to rethink everything with the Performing Arts Center once Wade got word that if we add on to the high school, we need to do that. So we had spent a couple months waiting on him to really get plans fine-tuned for that, and so we didn't get off on the best foot with the informational campaign. And then as soon as we filed the motion, Amanda took those to Kevin's office, we started getting calls. So we did our best to stay on the offensive, so we want to have a decision early. So questions?
Assuming you do consultation with everybody.
Yes. Their initial recommendation after we didn't pass was that, I had shared that we were going to cut the bond projects quite a bit down. So Neil and Jeff had figured it with about a 23 million. Now we've got it down to 21.4, and that's where they said the 60 cents was doable in order to fund those projects and still keep us going out every 5 to 6 years for new bond projects. And so their recommendation would be, because of the urgency of the bond, that we should probably try to get that across the finish line first. As an executive team, we see the benefits of fixing our budget and closing the pay gap. So it's a little bit hard for us to dive right into that. But so that's where that is. And then meeting with Colin recently, I shared the list that's in the slideshow with him. He's excited about it still as a construction manager at risk. And I mean, we've approved Bachmiller to do that. He says even though it's not $48 million, it's not a big, massive project at the high school. He's still, it's work for his guys. It's good projects for them. So he's like, this makes a lot of sense. I've gotten a lot of feedback, heard good things about how the process went. Just what we already know is the Performing Arts Center was off-putting and the increasing taxes. So gone back to, I had talked to LJ Hart about the possibility of trying to do a budget or a levy transfer even before we dove into but we had at least $30 million of projects even early on. And so Neil did not feel like we could probably substantially do a levy transfer and still make the payments on $30 million, but $23 million, he felt like we could do something, with 30 cents would get the money we need. So, working with all of those people, talking through it, problem solving through it with all of them. What other questions?
So we pass the bond issue first, and we come back in August,
Next April.
Whatever the next period is.
See, the hard thing is that we've gone out and said we need 90 cents for all these improvements, and then a year later we're like, well, we only need 60. So so it's just that's what was so hard about if we ran a bond issue this past April and passed it, and we're doing $48 million of projects right now and stretching our budget and deficit spending, and then we go the very next year. I always made that argument of like saying we deficit spent, we lost 4 or 5% of our. They'd be like, "Oh, you just got $48 million for all those projects." So it's always that catch-22 that we're in. It's like, that's why we tried so hard to message it together. We're focusing on people and our facilities all at the same time. This is definitely an uphill battle, more so than we maybe counted on for here. People said you communicated about it too much. You wore people out. Like Mindy and I had gone to a lot of workshops and modeled it after successful bond measures that we'd heard of, like go to every concert, go to every group that you can find, the list of groups that Matt had given me before he left. I went to most of those, and then some of them said no this time because it was a tax increase and they had already gotten some negativity from key people. So that was hard to navigate, like how hard do I push to get into some of those groups that are saying no to us. So anyways, a lot of lessons learned. Other questions?
But I think it's really not a tax increase. I really don't see why not run both at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if that's going to be, we're just going to transfer money to do our operations, plus we want to do projects, there's so much tax increase.
Yeah. Something. I put it on there, so I want you guys to think about it and connect with people and kind of share. If you have more questions, reach out to me and get some feedback. And we don't have to decide it's July, but we do need to decide fairly soon and start trying to delineate the two. I went through our two biggest critics and swallowed my pride the best I could, and they both were like, "This makes a lot of sense to do the levy transfer and less projects." Those type of projects are going to pass. Probably the two that are still polarizing on there a little bit are the sports complex, which, having done the videos, having seen how kids practice for track, it was just really eye-opening to me, and I think people don't realize how crazy it is for them to be running around the streets at the middle school, Roosevelt and Lincoln, throwing, the shot put and discus as traffic is driving away, or when they all show up at the high school. And then there's, already 140 kids at the high school program from Jordan Stone. We've got soccer going on in the field. We've got some the last month of school, we got football stuff going on. And we've got 100 plus middle schoolers show up all at the same time over there. And then the other thing would be Washington Franklin, because it's like, why aren't you just tearing it down? But we really had some good ideas to improve it. Of course, it was late in the game when we were going to take the front off, so we the front entrance off, but we have different renderings for that, so we would go into it from the beginning saying that's not really the plan. And so it just brings that building up to standard. We got a lot of kids still going through that building. Electrical upgrades. There's a lot of safety. There's an elevator going in there, so ADA accessibility. It's not just making it pretty, but it is restoring some pride to it. After the election, I'd say, especially during those spring months, lots of rain and things hadn't grown back yet. That was probably the thing that bothered me the worst about not passing, is that we didn't get to give that building a facelift. Other than that, I think we're down to the basic things. What else? Okay, we'll revisit it in a couple weeks after you've had time to think about it. Contact me with questions, get some feedback from people you know, and we'll hopefully have a direction pretty soon.
Okay, so some things to think about. We have the monthly financial report. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, moving down to just want to call your attention to these policy updates, and we're beginning a 30-day review, and that'll be a vote on our next board meeting. And down to discussion and action items. And do we have any discussion, or anybody have comments to make, or questions, or whatever for any of the consensual items? Okay, then I need a motion and a second and a vote for the consensual items. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, no opposition? All right. It's time for us, since we've completed our business, to move to closed session.
Make a motion to move to closed session. Discuss personnel, pursuant to statute 610.02, paragraph 1, 3, 13, and 14.
Second?
Okay, roll call.
Bowden,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Kane,
Yes.
Howard, Lawson,
Yes.
Noble,
Yes.
Pond.
Yes.